Welcome, welcome, welcome to Soul the Story, Book 2, Chapter 6, right? Chapter 6. I am your host, your guest on this storytelling journey, Derek Tyler Attico. I have a guest that I've been looking forward to speaking to for a long time. And truth be told, he's someone that when I started to think about an idea for a show and the individuals I wanted to speak to, he was at the top of my list. So without for any further ado, I'd like to introduce N. Stephen Harris, the incredible artist extraordinaire for so many comics that you read and recognize. Stephen, how are you today? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Mondani won the primary, so I'm okay right now.
Right, 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 right.
You're right.
That was some good news today. Here in New York, we had a primary, and it was some really good news with Mr. Mondani. So that was good, and hopefully we'll go forward and we'll have a new mayor that's actually a socialist, into socialism. So that's gonna be a good thing.
Mm.
That's gonna be- So, but we're not here to talk about politics. Well, maybe we'll get a little bit into politics, but we're really here to talk about you. As I said at the top, man, I've been looking forward to this conversation. We've never really spoken a whole lot, but always good vibes. I think the first time I ever met you was when I picked up at the Schomburg. I think it was pretty sure it was the Schomburg. The Watson Holmes comics, which is just
Okay.
like incredible, and we had like a brief conversation, which still left an impression on me. And so I've followed your work since then, and you're just a phenomenal artist. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to get right into it, man. I want to know, um, what was your first encounter with art or with storytelling? That first spark that you had, and made you put you on this path to being an artist.
Oh wow, that's two different questions because as far as
Okay.
art, I've been always I've been drawing since I can remember, since at least the first grade of kindergarten. I was drawing these little scenes, little uh side to side scenes of tanks and whatnot, and cars and vehicles. And then in the third grade, I saw Star Wars, and I just changed everything. And then I got into anime, and I watched a cartoon called Star Blazers, which is called Space Battleship Yamato in Japan. And
Right. That's
and
right.
my first anime was Marine Boy, and so Star Wars anime got me into sci-fi and stuff like that. I started drawing these big one scene drawings, of space battles, spaceships, fighter planes from like the third grade into about sixth grade, seventh grade, sixth grade.
Right.
Sixth, no,
Wow.
so about eighth grade. So about eighth grade, I think so. And then yeah, then started in high school. I said, I've been drawing this, but I want the progression. And then that came into my then that came with my interest in storytelling. I said
Right.
either I want to do animation or comic books. I said, no, animation is too hard, so let me do comic books. And but I needed to learn how to draw the human figure. And
Right.
I was always drawing spaceships and mechanical stuff, cars and spaceships and fighter planes. And so I had to learn how to draw a figure. And I figured, let me look at comic books in a different way than I was doing before. Because I was collecting comic books since Star Wars, and
Right.
that's 77, 78. But then there was a lull in the 80s, and then like early 80s when I started going to high school, I started collecting comics, looking at the artists, looking at being more conscious
Mm-hmm.
of the
Mm-hmm.
artists and the artwork. And some of my early influences were like Paul Smith, X-Men's Paul Smith, John Romita Jr., John Byrne, Michael Golden.
Of course.
Later on became Jose Garcia Lopez, um, Barry Windsor Smith, Larry Stroman, uh, Stephen Rude, his dynamics, Steve Rude, and a whole and others I can't mention right. I can't think of right now. Oh, Rick Leonardi, was a big
Right.
one. As a matter of fact, when I joined this school outside of college, called the Children's Art Carnival, the peers there called me Little Leonardi after Rick Leonardi. because my work looked so much like him at that time.
Wow.
I fortunately got a chance to meet him, and like when I was doing Watson Holmes, I got to no, actually I met him before then. I met him.
Oh wow.
I was next to him at a table at WizardCon in Philadelphia back in '07, '08,
Right.
maybe earlier. Oh, probably '07, '08. I had the pleasure to sit next to him, but then I met him again, and we sat and chat actually at New York Comic Con when he was doing after his run on Watson Holmes.
Right.
We sat and talked some more at Heroes Con back in like 2019, no
Oh
20,
man.
not 2019, 2017, 2018, in the hotel room, in the hotel lobby. So it was great, talking with him, and I met Garcia Lopez too on several occasions. Matter of fact, with Garcia Lopez, I was doing my own comic book when I was in high school. And
Right.
it was based off of video game consoles at that time, like
Wow.
Atari. Yeah, I was Atari, ColecoVision,
ColecoVision. Right. Right.
Atari 5200, Odyssey. So I had Intellivision and Atari
Very
5200, right? And those are the good guys. I designed my spaceships in large capital ship based off of those designs, those game
right.
designs. And they each had allies and whatnot. And I was called Atari Force. And I walk into a supermarket, and at the time if they had comics in the supermarket at that time in the early
Right.
'80s, they would have it in
Right.
packs, plastic packs. And I saw this
That's
book
true.
called Atari Force. I said, "What?" It broke my
Somebody
heart.
stole my idea.
Someone
Right.
stole my idea, right? And so, but that got me into seeing Garcia Lopez work, and also it led me into DC Comics too. That was my entry into DC Comics.
Wow.
Because up to then I was Marvel. I was a Marvel person, man. I was deep into Marvel, and so
Same here.
that led me into DC Comics and how DC Comics did things. And I was like, oh, and so I saw Garcia Lopez arc. I became a fan, and I followed his Atari Force, his Teen Titans, his
Right.
Dead Man, his Cinder and Ash.
Great
Uh,
stuff.
oh gosh, what's the graphic novel in the series?
Crisis
Not
or
Crisis.
not Crisis. That was Wolfman, right?
It was the futuristic with the
What's the Camelot 3000?
I have it here. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on that name. But it was out in the early '90s. Starts with I can't believe I'm blanking on that. But it was a
Sure, sure.
three part series
I know
that
the
he
one you're talking about. It's interesting to me how Star Wars has been such an influence. It was the same thing for me, but for writing. I wanted to know everything about writing.
hmm
And so then I started doing that kind of stuff, looking at Lucas and how he wrote all that stuff. But it's also interesting that I find for comics, what's beautiful about comics, other than like most other art forms, is that you can actually meet the people
Yeah,
that work on these books. And even as a writer, as a young kid wanting to write, I was like, I wouldn't met some people, but for you, I can't imagine what that must have been like as a kid wanting to, and then meeting these artists that are working on the books that you're looking at and are impacting you, and then you can like have discussions with them, man.
I met them as a young adult because
Okay,
I didn't meet them as a kid. I was meeting them as a young adult looking to get work,
okay,
and that's a little bit different. Uh,
sure,
with editors first because this is my first comic. Okay, I did a comic convention, a real small one in Jersey, in the Holiday Inn in I think Springfield, New Jersey. I didn't grow up in
right.
Springfield, but it was in Springfield, New Jersey. And the one I went to that was big was the Bob Greenberg show. No, Fred Greenberg shows.
Mm-hmm.
One's the editor at DC. One was a former editor at DC Comics, and was a comic convention. Uh,
Right, I know.
I think the Fred Greenberg shows, right, in
Right,
the
right.
'80s. And I went to that one in 1990 was the first one I went to. I saw editors. I talked to Walt Simonson. No, I talked to Walt Simonson, John Romita Jr., David Mazzucchelli. They gave me portfolio. They would give portfolio reviews at the time,
Right.
and so they gave me a critique of my work because I was in a class outside of college. I went to School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, but in my third year, I rolled myself into a community class when I moved to Harlem.
Okay.
Um, I moved to Harlem my third year of college. I started going to this place called the Children's Art Carnival where I met Michael Davis who was one of the co-founders of Milestone Media and the
Right.
founders of Static and Static Shock. From that class, my first day of class, I also met Dennis Cowan, who came by and visited the class. And so when I went to Michael Davis had an assignment for us. So our class assignment was to do a graphic novel, a 32-page graphic novel. We write, draw, color, and ink.
Wow, man,
And,
that's not
so
easy.
no. And so we had to do a 32. So he said, do a page a week. A page a week. By the end of the year, you'll have a full-fledged graphic novel
Wow.
that you created, and that you will have to show editors at the conventions. And so we did. He said, only rule is use a DC character, but do not use Batman. Do not have Batman anywhere in the comic book. My hard headed behind put Batman in there, but I had him get shot. And he was hospitalized. My character I used was the character I used was Black Lightning. He was the main character.
Right.
So so I brought those pages over to, but of course I didn't have the color version of them, because at the time color printing was a new thing. It was expensive.
Right.
So I had
Right.
photocopies of my pencil and inks.
Did you do everything yourself though? Your pencils, your inks, the colors, all yourself?
Yep.
That's nice. That's nice. That's
And
nice.
see, I broke it down. I came to class about 4 weeks late, but I broke my. It's like half the book was in black and white inks. The
Right.
other half I did was in color. I did it based on the storyline I was creating, but I didn't have a script. I was making it as like one long, what Slavas did, but so, and I do not recommend that, because you're gonna forget what you thought before. You're gonna have ideas come in your head. Nothing's written down. Everything's gonna become a jumbled mess.
That's so funny, man. I went to SVA for a little bit, and I took Dennis O'Neill was teaching how to write for comics,
Okay.
and I took his class, and I learned so much about how just to write, not just write for comics, but just how to write and to be a writer.
Right.
And he let me take the class, and let me audit the class second year for nothing, just to come in. He's like, "Well, you got to come in every class. You can't come in and come out, you know." And
Yeah.
this was like the 90s, you know what I'm saying? And so I came for a second year, and I learned so much about writing. And it's interesting to me how comic books. I mean, obviously you can see it now in film, but comic books produces so much quality storytelling, you know, and the artists like yourself, you know, and even me, my head, he was drilling in stuff about how to tell story, how to start late into the action, you know, all those things, and a lot of it is on those pages, right?
Yeah. Twilight. That's the Garcia Lopez book. That was
Yes,
written by Howard Chaykin, drawn by Garcia Lopez, and colored by Steve Olive.
that's going back, man.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
I just got it though. I got this
Oh,
before you typed it. What's up, Joe?
hey, hey, this is another great we have a great editor in the audience, Joseph Village, man.
Yeah,
So,
Joe and I went to SVA together.
okay,
Yeah, and
outstanding.
so I was in that school, the Children's Art Carnival, which is a
Okay.
community school, which I enrolled in not long after I moved to New York, in Harlem in particular.
Mhm.
Shortly after, so he has come in. So I had met Garcia. No, I mean, I met John Miller Jr., Walt Simonson, and Dave Mazzucchelli. They all gave me critiques of my art. I avoided the late great Neil Adams, because he gave harsh criticism. I was used to harsh criticisms in SVA from
Okay.
upperclassmen.
Sure, of course, right.
I just didn't want to be abused. So
Well, I mean, and sometimes meeting people like that, you know, you're like, oh man, I don't know if I want to hear what I want to hear, you know. But I think you're right. Harsh criticism is a really
yeah, I could deal with harsh criticism.
essential.
I just don't want to get insulted. But I mean, so I did later talk to him in '98 or '99
Mhm.
at San Diego Comic Con, where I showed him some Deadpool pages I did that was from the Deadpool '98 annual that I did for Marvel back in '98.
Okay.
So he gave me some nice critiques. Now I remember seeing him again at Wizard in 2013. I was just walking by. I saw him at his table. I was
Right.
walking by. I said, "Hello, how you doing?" He said, "That's a pretty man right there."
Neil Adams.
Neil Adams, yeah.
Yeah, Neil Adams, definitely.
Neil Adams, the
What
guy.
was you? Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Adams O'Neill team was, still is
And
phenomenal.
you said you went to
So
you said you went to SVA with
I did, but I went on my own dime. So I didn't
right,
go the whole 4 years, but I
right. So
went.
yeah,
I
he
went
came
for a
after
year
he
for
came after I
directing.
graduated. He came after I, cause all of them came after I graduated. Him, Simonson,
Right.
Carl Martino, Klaus Jansen. Right
Yeah, that
after
was.
the year I graduated, the fall I graduated in spring of '91. They
Oh
come in the
yes, I
fall
was.
of '91,
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, now you guys come.
yeah. I
And
was there. Memory serves around 94, 95, something around
right,
there. And by
okay,
that time, Daniel O'Neill had been teaching for a minute. And he was into a group, and I was taking photography classes, I was taking film classes,
yeah, I took yeah,
screenwriting, and I was like, I gotta take comics.
yeah,
And
because I
he
was
taught me more about writing than anything else.
he did what?
He taught me more about writing than any other class I've
Nice.
ever taken. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I became an illustration major because I wasn't too thrilled with what was coming out of what I saw coming out of the cartooning department at that time,
Okay, okay.
and I feel like I could get a better, well-rounded art education being a illustration major. And what the upper class told me at the time, and this is not I accepted it then, but this is not true at all. But they said, comics is drawing illustrations and panels and little boxes, but no, it's much more than that.
Much
But
more.
yeah, it's because storytelling is not that's not an easy thing to grasp.
So,
Uh, but I became an illustration major. I learned more about composition. I love composition. I had a great teacher, the late Sam Martin, and Jack Potter. I had other teachers that were really great there, that really gave me good critiques there. Bradford Brown taught me about gave me a technique. He was an illustration major, an illustration teacher. So I learning painting techniques from him, how to apply paint and oil paint for illustrations, and other teachers as well.
from a kid drawing, you knew that was your thing. Is that right? Is
No,
that fair to say?
I didn't realize it until my junior year in high school.
Okay,
Because I was always drawing.
right.
I think it just dawned on me when it was time to pick colleges, time to choose colleges. It just dawned on me that, hey, I could probably do this for a living. And then I started looking at colleges, and I landed with SVA.
Right. It's a
It
great
went from
place to
there.
land.
It went
Wow,
from
it's a
there.
great
Yeah.
place to land. So, okay, so you go into SVA,
Hmm.
you do the 4 years. What was your first so let me ask you this. When you left SVA, at that point, was the intent comics? Or
Yes.
was it was okay, so it was, I thought so.
Mhm.
So what was your first professional gig? Your first pro sale, pro gig.
A first professional gig after, because I was assistant to Dennis Cowan for a couple of years.
Right.
He helped me get a job with a company called Personality Comics based in Farmingdale, Long Island,
Okay.
and they did celebrities, sports figures, people in the media. And my first job was to do a Ricky Henderson biography. They always, they always had painted covers. I didn't do the cover, but they always had painted covers, and the inside was by somebody else, generally speaking. And I did pencil and inks. And I had to do it in 3.5 weeks. I did an awful job, but I finished the job, and I was accountable for it. So uh, they later gave me. I got more work from them later on. It was smaller, like 6 8 pages. It was a Jimmy Page story, which is pencils, so no inks in this one. And they later that was in '91.
Hmm.
Fast forward 2 years, they changed their whole model to superheroes, and they become triumphant comics.
Okay.
And I
Oh,
do yeah, I take on, and they 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 sought me out, and I did their flagship character in Chromium Man.
so was that your first like jump into like superhero comics?
No, that was my first one. That was my first ongoing series that lasted about this like 3 issues. or 4
Okay.
issues before they went bankrupt, and they still owe me money.
They
But
still
yeah,
own
but,
you. I know we all have
but
those.
my first my first story superhero one was a 10-page story of 10-page Fire and Ice story for DC Comics for the '93 showcase, which I did the year before, 1992.
Okay.
So that was my first one. That was 10-page story I did for DC Comics. And then I was the first artist on a character for Dark Horse Comics called X.
Right.
Yeah, my first and only Dark Horse job. But
What were those like, man? Because I mean, you're starting out, and this is at that time. I mean, you have the training, of course, and and all that under you. But now you're doing the thing. I know for me, first time I was doing the thing, I really didn't think about it. I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to think about that. I'm just going to get the thing done, and then I'll think about it after. Was it like that for you, or?
no, say it again. I wasn't
Like
clear.
for me, like the first time I wrote something professional, I never even thought about it. I was like, it doesn't make a difference if it's professional or not. I'm gonna be professional and get it done right, and then
Yeah,
I'll think about it later when I'm doing. Like my first professional gig was a Star Trek short story, but I didn't think about any of that. I just wrote the story. You know what I'm saying? I
yeah,
just
yeah.
wrote it and did it. So I'm curious for you. Now that you're at this level, are you like did did you have any I don't want to say imposter syndrome, not at all, but I mean did you have any like nerves, or you're like, or you just
Oh
like
yeah, oh
this
yeah.
is just
And nerves are okay. Me coming up with Dennis Cowan and Michael Davis prepared me, right?
right.
Most of the nerves got out the way when I first was Dennis Cowan's assistant, and I worked from a script. I worked on different paper I wasn't used
Sure.
to. Everything was out of my comfort zone,
Right.
and my work looked awful. I said, "Yo, I draw better than this. What's going?" I kept second guessing myself. I said, I tried to get in the writer's head what they were trying, what they went on the paper, instead of thinking what how I see this, instead of trusting my vision and melding my vision with the writer's words.
Yes.
So when I got my first job, I was nervous that I messed up, but it could have been much worse. It could have been much worse.
That's how
Uh,
we grow.
so when I before I was a Dennis Cowan's assistant, I was using different pencil. I was using different paper. I was used to drawing on illustration board.
Mm.
I was used to drawing with a number 6H pencil, which is
Hmm.
crazy. Uh, and so I later Dennis Cowan introduced me to mechanical pencil. I started using HB leads. I use right now. I still use mechanical pencil. I use the B lead right now. It's a little more comfortable for me right now.
And for those that don't know, I'm not saying that I know a lot, but I've worked with a few artists. So when you start talking about numbers and things like
Yeah,
this, you're talking about the thickness of the
no,
of the
it's the hardness.
lines
It's the
and the
hardness.
hardness. Right.
So 6H is hard and it digs in the paper. And as a penciler, especially at that time, you have to be cognizant of the inker because
Right.
if you drawing lines that are creating Star Wars trenches in the paper, it's going to affect line work of the ink.
Right.
And if the inker is using pen, a quill or a pen is going to affect it even more. If they're using brush, maybe not so much. But yeah, so I had to I switched over to a HB lead, which was much better for me. But as a left-handed person,
Oh wow. Me too. Wow.
I got I definitely have to have something under my hand so as to reduce smudge.
Yeah.
Nowadays, smudge fudge doesn't matter because I can scan the paper in and
You can scan it and
yeah,
get it all
take
done.
out those smudges in the levels. But yeah, so uh
Stephen, I'm
yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt your thought. Go ahead.
Oh, see, yeah. So the nervousness, imposter. I didn't hear about imposter syndrome until I guess millennials. Uh, but I was always worried about. I was always cognizant of the deadline. I wanted to be on
Right.
time. I wanted a professional job.
Right.
I knew I could do. I knew I could do the job. Uh, but I was worried about not doing a good job sometimes. I was worried about not doing it on time. So my confidence was built up over time, but I just knew I could do the job. I mean, I do have some things about, maybe it's not as good sometimes, but I know I belong here.
Right.
And after seeing some horror stories in comics, as far as artists not making deadlines or being flaky, or just and by far it's not always on the artist. By far, sometimes on the writer, sometimes on the editor. But
Absolutely.
just as an artist, as a penciler, I know I get the job done at a certain point. I know I can bring a certain quality to it. I know I can bring quality to it, and I know I have something special to bring to the books.
uh, this is a great opportunity for us to take a look at some of those special things that you bring to the books that you've done.
Oh wait, I'm
We
so
have
awful. Those are my work. Oh gosh, no, please don't do
we have some slides. We
that.
have some slides that we're going to show. If we could just start with, I guess, the first slide to show everyone some of the works of uh, Stephen Harris. We have Watson and Holmes.
Mhm.
These are a little bit older works that you've done. You just look at this incredible artwork, and you can look at the range of the artwork.
Yeah, well,
Fringe
the cover for Nora's New Black is by my brother Sean
is
Martinborough, who I also met,
right,
who we first met at Michael Davis's class at Children's Art Carnival.
which is a really great ensemble, an anthology of stories, noirs
Yes.
and black. I picked that up right away, man, when I heard that was coming out, and it's really, really, really well done. All of these works are really well done. Fringe, Watching the Holmes. I don't think anyone had done that, um, or even tried to look at something in regards to Sherlock Holmes and doing that. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay.
Just speak a
All right.
little bit
First
about
off,
those
I
works.
got to dispel any ideas that I created Watson Holmes or any,
Right.
because people think, because I mean I'm the one that had it a lot at the shows, and people associate me with the creation of it. The co-creators are Brandon Perlow and Paul J. Mendoza.
Right.
And the initial people on the first series were Rick Leonardi and Carl Bowlers, writer Carl Bowlers. So, okay, Watson Holmes is a reimagining of the Sherlock Holmes property in reimagining it with two brothers from Harlem solving crimes, and the whole world's reimagined. So you have the Irene Adler character as, for instance, you have the Irene Adler character as Irene Adlero, of Dominican princess,
Right.
or yeah, an indie artist, indie musician, and spoken word poet.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, and so you have Moriarty, which he doesn't make an appearance in any of the books, but he is mentioned, and he's like a music mogul, entertainment mogul.
I remember when these came out, and I think that was how I first met you and learned of your work. I actually met, I think, at the same time as the Schomburg, and I met the writers as well.
Mhm.
And I was just blown away. I was like, oh, this is really some amazing stuff, amazing work, And it's always great to see um, people, and specifically people of color, pushing boundaries and pushing things in new ways, telling stories in new ways. Can we take a look at the second slide and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, True
Um,
Fiction is published by a brother. He's an educator and military veteran named Stefan Manuel. He does these books that deal with actual historical events and historical time periods, but
mhm,
with fictional people telling a more personalized story of these stories. So you have Edward and Louise's journey, the Great Migration. No, Edward and Louise's journey. They're a couple
right,
living during the Great Migration, and so they tell their story while on a segregated train car leaving the South, Alabama, going to the North in Chicago, and they tell their story, what happened to them, and you see what a segregated train car looks like, which I knew of some things, but I know all with all of what was involved,
mhm,
or the experience of a segregated train car. And you have Cecile's brother, which is the takes place during the uh, the anti-lynching movement. So both these periods take place in the early part of the 20th century. So this is now the Cecile's brother is takes place during the anti-lynching movement, and she is a woman that passes for white, working with the NAACP, going into white neighborhoods and collecting lynching memorabilia. Now, lynching, that's a very pacified word or pacified
Right.
phrase. Now, lynching memorabilia is could be pictures or it could be body parts of Black
Yeah.
people that were lynched. It could be fingers, could be genitalia, could be ears, or anything
Yeah.
that could be in a box of as a keepsake for a lynching. And
And this is
so,
not, even though this is fiction, those events actually happen. Those things
yeah,
actually happen.
yeah.
Things like
So
that actually happen.
these are well researched things. So
Absolutely.
there may be so mixed in these stories may be some actual person like a supporting character or a character mentioned in the book. Maybe there may be an actual person that took place that was actually in that time period or in the story.
Wow.
Uh, so these are these are some hard books. The
Yeah.
first books
Yeah.
I did were kind of hard books, and the first two were Jude's War and Cecile's Brother. Now, Jude's War is the first book I did in 2019 when Stefan first contacted me, and so this is the first book of the series of true fiction, and it's grown since then. So this true fiction is about a brother that comes back from World War II to the Jim Crow South, dealing with PTSD, the Jim Crow South, and the beginnings of the Civil Rights Movement.
Yeah. This is good stuff. Can we see a let's take a look at the next slide.
Yeah. Okay. DMC. This
This is
is
some really
my
great
first
stuff.
time working with DMC, courtesy of a good friend of mine named Dean Haspiel. I was shared a studio with Dean Haspiel in Gowanus, Brooklyn. So DMC, wanted me to do a 10-page story for his book that was in conjunction with some new music that he was putting out with some with some hip hop luminaries. So
Right.
this is called short 10-page story called "Me and My Microphone," featuring Chuck D, Ice T, Bumpy Knuckles, and Jazzy Jeff
Right.
coming together as superheroes to fight a hate monster rampaging through New York City. And the
Wow.
colors are done by awesome colors based in Johannesburg, South Africa, from Zimbabwe, by way of Zimbabwe, named
Oh wow.
Walt Masanza and Barna. Walt Masanza Barna.
That's
Now I've been working
amazing.
with him since 2012, 2013, when my late friend and co-creator of Ajala found him, came across his work, and he did the issue 2 of Ajala for us.
And Ajala, I don't know. Do we have a slide with Ajala? I don't think we
You
do.
know, okay, I get if you want to share the screen, I could do that. I know you know me.
Uh, yeah, I don't know if we can if it'll work, but Ajala is a phenomenal
Yeah,
story as well.
and
Um,
the previous slide you had with is an upcoming story from DMC's DMC graphic novel trade that he puts out from time to time. This is the 4th volume, and it's this story. This particular story is chapter 2 of that 4th volume, and this is this is DMC. I don't want to tell him any of the story, but this is this is a superhero character he's put out a while ago,
nice.
and this is volume 4 of that superhero series DMC.
And this is not out yet. This is going to be coming out
No,
soon.
no, it is unrelated to the 10-page story that I did
Okay,
earlier, and also
great.
same colors Walt Sansa Barna, who did these colors.
Wow. Yeah, these are popping. These are popping. I love these. Let me ask you. You've done so much work.
Yeah.
Um, what's it like in comics? It strikes me that comics is and it's a lot like in many ways it's a lot like film, where it's a collaborative process. You know,
Yes.
the
Yes.
story moves from the writer to the penciler to the inker to the color. You know, the whole process of creating an actual comic book. It's a lot
Mhm.
like film. Um, what have you learned in during those collaborative processes about working in a team and being, because it's not only you as the artist pushing your work, but you also have to leave room and space for everyone else. So what have you learned in that collaborative process?
What I've learned is that, especially when working in mainstream comics, is that everyone relies on everybody else. If you can't, I can't be, I really can't be a artist, so to speak.
Hmm.
In the sense that I can't be like, I can't that um I operate under a deadline, and other people are coming behind me, and we're all getting paid, and we all have bills to pay, and I have to have this done in a certain time, so they can get this, and they can get paid and have their uh get so
Keep
they get paid
talking.
and get their bills paid. I hope you're not getting kidnapped by the UFO.
No, I'm actually having a brownout, which is
Oh,
crazy.
oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, which is really weird. We had one here yesterday because of the heat, and I just had another
Oh
one just now. So yeah,
yeah.
but it's okay. Yeah,
Yeah. So because I've suffered before when haven't gotten script in time.
right.
When I was doing Aztec, the two writers I was working with were Grant Morrison and Mark Miller,
Oh wow,
and they both got sick. One had strep, one had a stomach virus, and I think one got strep throat or
wow,
scarlet fever.
right.
And and fortunately they had some scripts in already, so I, instead of doing it in sequence, I did no I already did issue one. I did issue two, but I had to do issue four first before doing issue three because they got sick. And fortunately, I no these this was, Aztec was started, had a long leeway before it started. So it's called, so when you have a long leeway, the term is you have issues in the can.
Hmm.
And this was 96, January 96. Also, there was so much leeway. So I had like 4 or 5 issues before the first issue came out in
Right.
the can, and I was
That's
also
good.
able to, and there was also enough time for me to get married and go have my honeymoon at that time too.
Good.
But I mean, but I was, some artists have done work on their honeymoon. I said, hell no, I'm not doing work on my
No, no,
honeymoon.
no, no, no.
I
I
said, nah,
mean, that may be devotion, but that's a little.
yeah, nah,
That's a little much, man. Right. It's a little
yeah,
much.
yeah, and
But
it's I mean,
yeah,
we're already working on weekends, and I mean, I was doing Aztec. I was doing 6 days a week, and I mean, I could have done seven, but I was taking Sunday off.
do you set regular hours for yourself when you're working? Because you're not actually, a lot of times you're not going to a place, you're doing it at home. So do you set yourself like, I'm gonna do it during this block of hours in the day, and I'm not gonna touch my work,
That didn't really
or you
work for
just,
me. I tried it, but it's like sometimes I don't get the work done until it gets done. You know,
I'm like that too. Sometimes you just gotta
and
get it done, right? Yeah,
yeah, because
yeah.
sometimes it's not it doesn't go smoothly. Sometimes I'm stuck on a page.
Right.
Sometimes it does. I may start working at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and I don't get into a groove until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
It just happens like that, right? It
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So all right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I
Go
may
ahead.
be up, yeah, I may be up working 11, 12 until like 2 or 3. Not anymore, but or maybe I do it all night if I get inspired. But then I'm back up
Right.
doing some more work. And then when I was doing Aztec, I mean, I prefer Aztec because that was one of the few times I was doing an ongoing series. So
Right.
I mean, had a routine, work from Monday through Friday, turning pages on Friday, chill out the rest of Friday, go back to work on Sunday. I mean Monday. I mean Saturday, do some sketches for the next group of pages. Take off Sunday maybe, and Monday and Tuesday I'm working those sketches and layouts, and then doing enough work to turn in 5 pages by Friday.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and that's
I cannot do 5 pages now. That's out. I'm doing a
that.
project right now. I'm doing another project right now with True Fiction, and I'm just barely doing 3 pages a week, 3 to 4 pages a week.
You can't always predict what your flow is gonna be like. Whether it's gonna
Yeah,
have good flow,
yeah.
bad flow. As a writer, I definitely understand it. Let me ask you, when you're working, and this is a little bit of a self-serving question, but I think it's applicable. So when you're working, how do you, regardless of the project, how do you try to get to the soul of the story, but for the soul of the story in that project, because you're putting yourself into it, but you're also, like you said, you're collaborating. So you're looking at what the writer's done, you're looking at what you want to bring to it, what's going to come after you. How do you try and tap into that and give everyone space? Also tell the story and also put yourself into
That's a good question. I'll answer this way.
it. Okay. Any way
It
you
may
want.
take me it may take me like 8 pages to get into it,
Hmm.
but into the story or the character, it may take a couple issues. Like with Michael Cray. Um,
Right.
Michael Cray, yeah. And there were a few hiccups during that run because I did the first 3 issues in full pencil on Michael Cray. And then when they gave it to me, it was like 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks. That's like right up against it. And I can't do a book in 4 weeks. I got time to do sketches, and now I can turn in 5 pages. And after I do the sketches, so I was like 4.5, 5 weeks right there.
Right.
But so at some point it ran into some deadline issues, and then after those 3 issues, I had to do 3 issues in finishes um over the great, oh gosh, GI Joe,
Um, um,
Marvel GI Joe,
I know. Yeah.
Japanese Japanese
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah. I don't know his name, but
Goodness,
I know the
yeah,
book. I don't know his name.
yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
He was doing the breakdowns, and I had to finish his pencils, right? Finish his
Right.
breakdowns. Larry Hama, Larry Hama. So yeah, so he was so that was a hindrance on me really getting into the story because I was getting into the story from issues 1 to 3, and then I had to get the pages done,
Right.
issues 4 through 6, and I made a
Wow.
promise to come back with issue 7 with a vengeance, and I think I did. I think I did, and but we changed the colorist. God bless the young woman who did the colorist before. She's a great colorist, but she wasn't working out for my style or the style of book.
Mm-hmm.
I saw her book. I saw her work on other works later, and it looked great. It looked great. A young woman from the UK, Ireland or Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her name. I met her at Comic Con in 2017, and then in came Campbell. I think it's Rob Campbell. I'm not sure. I think he's from overseas as well, but he did a bang up job on issues 7 through 12 of Michael Cray, and that came at the same time where I said, "No, I'm sticking my foot in this," and
Right.
it also helped for me to get into a groove with Brian Hill's script because it was Warren Ellis's template, but Brian Hill's script and soul in this book, and good writing is easy. It's easier to get into a book with good writing, and you get into the
Sure.
characters, immerse the character with good writing, and I think that makes it easier to do that because I'm invested in the work and I want to see what happens, and I'm like uh, having fun composing these panels and drawing these action sequences in this book, and
Well,
these characters is twisted. They're twisted,
in a
but
lot of ways, you're a fan first because you're reading the script,
yeah.
right? So you're reading it as just anyone would read it when it comes out, and then you have to put on that other hat and say, okay, now that I've taken in this material, how am I going to articulate this, on the
Mhm.
page? So so that's very interesting, man. I've only been fortunate enough to work with a few artists, and I know we always have discussions back and forth. They'll tell me, and like the first time, I've had people tell me, "Oh, you're gonna have to adjust this, or you're using too much description. You got to pare it down."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. This is not prose. This is comics.
this is not right. This is not prose. Right. This is not right. This is not prose.
Yeah.
And less and less and less. And I've been fortunate. I taught introduction to storytelling at the Task Academy for sequential art, and for a year. I did
Hmm.
two semesters for them. And online, of course. And I tell the writers the same thing: pare it down, because you're about to give this to an artist. So, less will be more. Give them that room. Give them
Yeah,
that
because
that
if it's
that
too
space.
descriptive, we can get lost. Oh, I can get lost in that description. Now I'll leave something out. If you just give me, it's no courtroom. It says it's no courtroom of Mississippi or something like that, or
Right.
then I'll look up some courtrooms in Mississippi. We
Right.
got Google, we got Bing, we have the internet. There's the Pinterest.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Um. All right. Let me ask you a question. From growing up, young adult, and getting into comics, um, what was, or even was representation on your mind back then? Because I know as a kid, I wasn't really thinking a lot about, if I'm being really honest, I wasn't really thinking a lot about representation. I was into the characters and the stories. And it was only as I got older, I thought
Yeah.
about that. And it was like, oh, I want to see more of that of myself, and people that look like me in those books. How was that for you? Was that a thing, or you weren't even thinking about it at the time?
Let's see. Let's put it this way. You remember Sinbad's Adventures?
Yes, yes, man, yes,
And I was
yes.
really young when I first saw one of the stories, right? And so the idea of representation was off and on thing, maybe a thing that I tried to bury
Mm,
because when I saw this particular adventure of Sinbad's Adventure, there was a brother in there with a turban, the baggy pants, and the
mm,
shoes. Right, he's part of the crew. I said, "Oh
right,
shoot, a brother is in there, right?"
right,
And so I see him, rocking out throughout. I don't know he had much of a part, but at some point in later in the film, he gets killed. I'm like, oh man. And so whenever I saw someone black in a movie or TV show, then that representation thing creeped up in my. I say, oh, there he is, right? And
right,
it's so cute. You rooting for that person, and then I get in these discussions with these white kids at school, and I'm like, yo, you guys. I didn't have the words to articulate my argument against them because I know much about history, but no, they have dozens of people, hundreds of heroes. I want you one and say, of course you chose him. Yeah, of course I chose him because he's the only one or she's the only
right,
one. So
right. Right.
uh,
All we had was Lando in Star Wars, right? All
yeah,
we had was,
yeah, and he was a scoundrel, but he became a
and he was a scoundrel. But
but
right,
he
right.
became a hero.
Pride.
But, yeah, you don't know his full arc, his full story. I mean, you know it later on in the comic books, but not in the movies.
Right,
So yeah, and so um the representation arc became very prominent for me and when I was in comedy, starting off my career, because I was
mhm,
like I was to New York, I was getting aware of myself. I was politically aware, consciously aware. I was reading books about history. I was going to lectures, and I was in Harlem, man. I mean, of course, I'm
we're in
in
Harlem.
Harlem.
I was born in Harlem, so I
Yeah,
understand. I
I mean, I was
understand.
in it. I was going to City College, but I was going to School of Visual Arts, but I was near
Right.
City College, the bevy of political active and
Of
activism.
everything. Yes, yes.
And I
Excellent.
was I was active. I was active around City College stuff going around at that time. So yeah, I had to keep it cool because this is comics, and I was employee inside DC Comics during the early
Right.
90s, early
That's
mid
yeah.
90s,
That's a big
and
deal.
the 90s was a heyday. I mean, there was Sharpton, there was there was
Jesse was running. There was a lot of things
yeah,
going on.
there was Crown
Right.
Heights going on. There was Crown Heights
Right.
going on.
Right.
Gavin
Right. A
Cato's,
lot.
his sister, his cousin, and it was hot. And
Right.
I had to hear people in the office of DC Comics, which is Lily White, talking about Badmouth and Sharpton and what black people wanted and whatnot. And I had to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, because
But
you're working in the industry that.
yeah, and I would listen to LIB, Black Talk Radio, but I was doing stuff, in the community. So at some point I was an artist, but I didn't know how to write, so I didn't know how to arrange a story, or yeah, yeah, go from premise to personal people, um, character development. So
Mhm, mhm.
I had ideas, but I didn't have a hardly you say I had no wherewithal at the time how to
Right.
put together a story until I joined the studio in '97, and the brothers there, one in particular, Greg Williamson, who helped me not only with my art, my business sense, and he helped me with how to put together a story. And so out of that, out of learning how to put together a story, I started writing. Was it writing the Fringe here?
Right.
And so, uh,
Phenomenal book. Man.
oh, thank
Fringe.
you, thank you. It's
Yeah,
not finished. I'm trying.
phenomenal.
I'm a okay. I'm putting down the ethos now. Okay, so I guess I got to do it.
Put
I
it out
wanted
there. That's right.
to do a Kickstarter this year for Fringe to get
Oh, yeah, definitely.
get it to continue it.
Definitely.
But yeah, so representation. I mean, and now after in the 2000s, there's been more comic conventions, right? And
Right.
people there's okay. In '92 there was the late great Turtel only did the Black Age, right?
Right.
Then 10 years later, we have Yumi Odom and Maurice Waters doing ECBAC, East Coast Black Age Comics Convention. And
Right.
so
Right.
these
I've been to
comic
that.
conventions provided Black people a venue to show their work to to community, shoot the
Right.
creativity right in the veins of the community, and not and avoid the middleman of the comic book stores or comic book companies.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
with these venues popping up years, in the subsequent years, we have Honest Con in Atlanta. I met Joseph Wheeler in Honest at APAC. We had the late Maya Crown Williams do MechaCon in Detroit. Andre Batts doing his Black yeah his Motor City. I can't remember his name. His show, but yeah, he did his show in Detroit. Black Age Motor City Comic Con. That's it, Black Age Motor City Comic Con, and some people in New York doing theirs. You have Alex Simmons do his Kids Con. You had Ray Phillips do his Bronx Heroes Con, and then now you have bigger ones coming up. Now you have DreamCon in Texas, I think. You have to go
Right.
there. You have brother Deron Flood doing Atlantic Comic Con in Norfolk, Virginia. It's going into second year. God bless that brother. Uh,
Absolutely.
BirdCon over in DC. You have all these cons popping up, and these cons, creating networks for everybody, the creatives doing their work and having us. You have Schomburg in Harlem, created
It's a
by
job.
there's a that covers by John Jennings. Let's say John Jennings. Created the Schomburg created by John Jennings, Jerry Kraft, um, Deidre Holman, and the brother named Jerry. Got his last name, who's a professor.
And I think
Uh,
while we're talking about the Schomburg, let's give them a quick shout out because every year the Schomburg Library in Harlem has a
mhm.
comic book event, like a weekend, right?
Not every weekend. I wish every weekend.
No,
every
not every weekend, but
Yeah,
a weekend once a year.
yeah. This
Uh,
this year we merged with the Larry Festival. It wasn't as great as it was previously when there was a rain and some promotional issues, but hopefully we'll come back next year stronger and better.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
it was as great as it usually is uh, in previous years. But yeah, before New York Comic Con, I mean before Schomburg, Jerry, John, and Turtel were doing uh, the Black Age comic event, a comic um, doing a comic event, and ours was in New York was at the U-Man bookstore, which is now online now, but there was a space for U-Man. Oh, you're in New York, so you know
Yeah,
U-Man
yeah,
bookstore.
yeah, yeah. I mean, just saying stuff, and I'm like, oh wow, it's like slugged my
Yeah,
memory. It's like, yeah,
U-Man
yeah,
bookstore
absolutely.
was
Wow.
used to be right next to the Larry Johnson Theater over on Frederick Douglass Boulevard between 124th and 125th Street. By the sister, her name escapes me right now. But yes, before like 3 or 4 years prior to Schomburg, we were there. But when we went to Schomburg in 2013, it blew up, and no one expected that.
Yeah, it was a really big. I remember it was like everybody was talking about it. It was a really big thing. What I love is that you specifically in your work has been there from the beginning, and not just you, of course, other of the artists or the writers,
Mhm.
but you're part of that cadre of people that have been there from the beginning, and you're doing work mainstream, but you're doing a lot of not just successful, but I think personally important independent work. Because if this isn't done, it's not necessarily going to be picked up by mainstream,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And so I salute everyone that does that work and tells those stories, man, because they need to be told. As a writer, I tell stories. And I do stuff for mainstream, and then when I'm working on an anthology or working on something, I try to put in something else. So it kind of feels like that same
yeah,
thing
yeah,
with
yeah.
you.
I mean, since these times, I've been more. I mean, I've been in contact with people who want to do comic books, and whether they have grants or they have their money themselves. Like this book right here, Indigo Clan. I did with his brother out in the West Coast. It's not finished now, but hopefully we can continue it. But I did 5 issues for him. Oh no, I did 4 issues, but 5 issues are out. I hopped on from issues from 2 to 5. A brother named Ryan Nagasta, who
Mm,
created this book, Indigo Clan, which is a book about 6 young people. It's a metaphysical martial arts action adventure featuring 6 young people fighting an ancient evil, using their powers derived from their culture and their spiritual beliefs.
oh wow,
Yeah, yeah.
wow,
And the real quick with Ajala is about a young teen who finds out her parents were once part of a secret organization called the CSC, and it takes place in current day Harlem, and she wants to join this organization. So as we follow her through her training, we learn more about her, her family, the organization, and the community around her, and a rival group called the Quo, which is run by a corrupt politician who's trying to destabilize community through gentrification and other means.
wow. Let me ask you a question. We're probably going to go a little bit over. 'Cause I just have like 2 or 3 more questions for you. But I'm curious. Over the course of your career, have there been themes or questions that you find that are reoccurring, or things maybe that you're even asking yourself as you're working on projects?
Reoccurring themes,
Yeah.
as far as the stories, or what?
As far as the story, any way you want to take that, like maybe something personally that you find that is reoccurring, and you're like, oh wow, I never thought about that, and I'm finding that I'm working. I know I've worked through a lot of things in what I write, right? And so a lot of the things I write is a lot of times I'm writing about justice or
Okay.
injustice, whether
Well,
I realize it or not. So
I've run the gamut. I mean, since 2010, I've done work for the late great L.A. Banks in her book, The Vampire
oh, wow.
Huntress.
Right,
So that's
right.
like monsters and vampires. I've done sci-fi in Voltron. I've done murder mysteries detective with Watson Holmes.
Right.
I've done fantasy, sci-fi, and um, Indigo Clan. Now I'm doing a lot of historical stuff with True Fiction, and I'm working with a man from Staten Island who I just did a panel with him at City College, and uh,
It's a vulture.
named Timothy Ledwith. He's from
Wow.
Staten Island, and he did he's working on he's working he did a story about a discrimination case,
Mm,
housing discrimination case in Staten Island back in the 1920s, 19 teens, 1920s, about a black couple. The father, the husband and father, African American. The mother is mixed African American and Sri Lankan. Her father was Sri Lankan, and
oh,
that's an interesting history that I would like to know more about. But so is it he? They move into Staten Island. They they're dealing with discrimination through a business owner in the community, and the community wants them out. They need a white woman sells them the house, and all of a sudden they're trying to there's this community is trying to get them out. They
right.
face they take them to court and sue them and successfully win, and they live there up until the 70s, until they both pass away. Now, so he's trying to. I did 10 pages, and we're trying to get that published. to a publisher. Get it published by a publisher. So we were shopping it around. We're trying to shop. We want to shop it around at some point to some publishers and see what's happening. Hint, hint. John Jennings at Megascope. Sorry for the pressure, John, but it's the hustle.
You know what I love about your work, man, is that all the different themes that you do, like from Voltron to Ajala to Watson Holmes, I look at your work, I can see that's your work, but I can see that it's different. You're always putting something different on everything that you do, and I don't think that's easy to do. So can you speak a little bit about that?
I could always come to this one point with Watson Holmes when I was working with Brandon Easton. Shout out to Brandon Easton and his work and his work and efforts to teach writing to people who are new in the business. When we were doing Watson Holmes, which is a very thoughtful story about trafficking and the trans community, or touching on trafficking, human trafficking, and touching on the trans community. He was doing a story and about a politician who was embroiled in this scandal in the story, and so it takes place in Harlem. I've lived in Harlem for like almost 10 years, and I've read a lot about Harlem, and so I say, this politician has security. I said, won't the security be the FOI, the Fruit of Islam, the security wing of the nation?
Right.
And so because it's Harlem, and then
it's Harlem, right? That makes sense.
I've run into the Fruit of Islam several times when I was doing my work in Harlem, and they're very, they hire the services out for security, and they are no joke. I mean, we know what happened with Giuliani's cops when he was first inaugurated. For those of you who don't know,
that's right.
For those of you who don't know, when Giuliani was first in office after his inauguration, he had some cops roll up in one of the mosques in Harlem.
Right.
And they were armed, and it is illegal to come into a place of worship, whether you're a Muslim or Christian or Jewish, to come in a place of worship with guns.
Right.
These 5 or 6 Nation of Islam FOI members dispatched those 5 officers with the quickness, unarmed them, and threw them downstairs. And there's a picture of them in the newspaper. They look so pathetic. I mean, the officers, they look so pathetic.
Right.
But then, I think they end up getting some charges on them. But yeah, that was a moment. That was a beautiful moment in Black history, and a hope for revolution, Black revolution.
You know what? While we're talking about moments in Black history, let's look at the slides for Harriet Tubman, because you're also doing work on that.
Yes.
Harriet Tubman, Demon Slayer.
Yes.
Also, talk a little bit about this.
All right. So, working for the great David Crownson, he wanted me. Listen. I remember when I first met David when he had the idea of Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer, and we met in a cafe or something in New York City on the West Side,
right,
in the 40s, like close to West Side Highway. And he was telling me about Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. I was skeptical, but I wasn't gonna tell him don't do it because I didn't want him to come back to me. I didn't want to be part of a story where people tell me not to do it, and I did it, and look at me now. So I said,
"This just a name, Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer."
I said this could either be crazy, or you could just like go crashing, burning, and because people are so protective of Harriet Tubman and in our history. So so if you do this, you have my blessings to do this. He wanted me to get me involved somehow, but I couldn't do it at that point. And this was like back, I think 2015, 2016. So come full circle. Along the way, I did the cover for him for issue 4. I was glad I could do that. I did like maybe a couple of years after, maybe 2017, 2018. I probably did the cover for him. And then now I got to do a full issue with him, which I've always wanted to do. And it is with a werewolf, and it's a mega werewolf at that.
It looks really good.
It's an action-packed issue, the first issue after the trade. So it's issue 7. It's
Right.
issue 7. Hopefully it'll come out sometime this year. So hopefully I'll be on there again and do some more work with Harry Tubman Demon Slayer. But yeah, when it comes out, look for it. Look for it. I did a couple of covers for them too. The covers got some amazing response for them from the people. So I'm very enthused about that. So hopefully when it comes out, it'll be a big hit.
Oh, it's looking really good. So I'm excited. All right. So you've got another fan. I was a fan already, but I'm excited for this as well, man.
Oh,
All right.
also this
Yes.
one more thing. This in that book, there is some characters in there that I draw as racist mass shooters that get their comeuppance in the book.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, so there's like yeah, I don't tell too much, but there's
No. But yeah, this is
like
this is
recent mass shooters that really hurt our community that
wow.
I have as likenesses as some of the slave catchers in the book. So
This
hopefully
is going to be
maybe
interesting.
if I did my job, you could probably pick out the likenesses of who I took them from.
Right. Right. Your the
My
sisters are
website, yes.
putting up your website. Is this the central place where we can find all of your works, right?
No, you can check me out on Instagram too. At Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, all with N Steven, all with at N Steven Harris.
Okay, and we have all that. We have all that, and if we don't, we'll put it in the show notes. Stephen, I want to thank you, man. This has been a wonderful hour. Speaking with you. I feel like we only scratched just a little bit, just talking a little bit of the surface of your career and your work and all the things that you could possibly talk about. But I want to thank you very much for the time that you
Well,
gave.
thank you for having me, man. It's been a pleasure. It's been
Absolutely.
fun talking about. It's been fun. It's been fun talking about me, right? But yeah, it's been fun sharing.
Right, but we right.
It's fun
But we talked
sharing.
a lot about the different ages and 80s, 90s, and so there's a lot of different things. So thank you for that.
Yeah, the '80s. Oh yeah, don't see that. See now you're gonna draw Kari Randolph out the woodwork. Talk about the '90s because we have a rivalry going back since I don't know how long, but yeah.
Wow, wow.
Shout
All
out to
right,
my
well
man
look,
Kari. I can't stand him. Leave that kid.
well, we definitely have to have you on again if you're so willing.
Absolutely,
And what
anytime.
great, fantastic, man. And while I'm thinking about it, I also want to thank everyone watching for listening and being a part of the Soul Story community. So if you're new, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss any of these conversations like the ones we're having here with the incredible and Stephen Harris. And hey, if you've got a brand or project that you want to reach a community and truly values authenticity, storytelling, and diverse perspectives, consider sponsoring the show. Our
Yeah, and
community enjoys connecting.
I want to show a call that's a sponsored or backed by a show a name called Sci-Fi Sisters. Man, I mean, come on, man. How
Right,
dope is that?
exactly, right. And I mean,
Sci-fi.
this show, right, is under Sci-Fi Sisters Inc., which is just a phenomenal plethora of shows that we have going on. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, man.
Thank you.
And speaking of, I'm sorry, say again.
Oh, I said thank you, Grand Love from the chat.
Oh, from the chat, yeah. And speaking of which, we have a live show July 1st. So look for that. That's coming up, and we'll see you on next week on one of our shows on Sci-Fi Sisters Inc. So once again, Stephen, thank you so much, and thank you
Thank you.
all on the live chat. Just thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you too, man. And the Sci-Fi Sisters.
And the Sci-Fi Sisters.